Hey everyone, and welcome back to After the Weekend. We got me, JT Gunn, and Cap. We've got Beard of Liberty here in
Howdy.
a new setup, or
Well, undisclosed
setup B.
location.
Yeah,
I know where he is.
setup B, and then we have R2, the icky, unwanted
Still not
health,
dead yet.
unwanted healthcare. Yeah, I'm glad you're back for this recording, Rick. 'Cause this will be a nice little exciting video that
It
we're going to
is.
cover.
I'm excited for this, and this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart as much as it is, I know, yours, and I'm hoping as well as Beard's as we find out tonight. But sorry, my camera's not on. I still need to get my office set back up.
He's hooked up to like a giant machine with tubes and.
No. Those
it's not that anymore. He's just not used to putting clothes back on yet.
Well, so it's weird because I'm not wearing underwear, but I have pants on, and I don't know why. I'm confused. Oh no, I made Beard go away with that one. I am though almost fully healed, so I can tell you that the hole in my torso is a lot smaller since last time we spoke.
Yeah, so today we're gonna remember those nights at Blockbuster or your local video store. Like, what do you remember back from, going into that store, picking out a movie, or hoping to get one and maybe it not being there? So we're gonna go over the nostalgia of those old video stores because the last few months we've been doing short little videos about the top videos of the 90s and the 80s. Now we're doing video games, so you can check those out on the channel. What do you guys think of those videos?
I love them. I mean, they're a lot of fun, and I mean, the big thing is with so many of them, like, all right, I'm gonna know this one, and I'm like, damn it, I was wrong.
Yeah, it's so many things I've just completely forgotten about.
I know, me too. And the game ones are even more fun. There are some games in there that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that game.
You're gonna want to enunciate the M on game ones.
Game night. Yeah, game night.
Yes.
Okay.
We're not in San Francisco. It's game night.
I mean, it could be. You know what?
Game night. So so we're gonna have a fun time with that. Okay. So ritual of renting. That's the first topic I kind of gonna go over. So Rick, let's start with you. What was the ritual of your family movie night or rental store? Was it like a weekly thing? Did you do it every other night? What was the deal there?
I mean, like during, when school was going, I would say probably wasn't like an every weekend thing, but I would say at least twice a month. We would go to the video store and pick out some things, and usually for us it was we try to pick out usually like something to watch as the family, and then my older sister's closer to my age, so usually me and her would pick out a thing of our own, and then my parents would pick out something for themselves. So like everybody got a little something, but then we got something to enjoy together as family.
Cool.
I have an older brother, but he could drive. He could go do his own thing at this time. So, we didn't really worry about him too much.
Yeah. Was it something you were looking forward to?
Oh, absolutely. I loved going to the video store, even from like an early age, even like my vague memories of being like 5, 6 years old.
Was it like a Blockbuster or more of a local store?
So growing up in Michigan, they were more like mom and pop shops. We didn't really have like a Blockbuster. It wasn't until we left Michigan and I moved out to Texas did I really discover Blockbuster. But the last place we were at in Michigan, like those last like 5 years, it was a independently owned place. It was called Discount Video in South Lyon, Michigan. So if anybody's listening that can reference that, to my knowledge, it's still there. But it was the size of a large Blockbuster. I mean, it was a healthy video store, and it was the first time I had ever experienced being able to rent like a Super Nintendo and a Sega Genesis. They had a huge game selection,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, I mean everything. I mean they had a good selection of videos from what I can remember. And yeah, I mean that was really my more memorable. There was a much smaller video store when I was a little bit younger called Movie Land that was probably more like the size of like a small convenience store, to kind of give you guys an idea.
Hmm.
And didn't nearly have as much, but they sold movie props, which is cool. I remember seeing like Spock's jetpack boots from Star Trek. The location we had that, and it had one of the I don't know if it was the one that Schwarzenegger wore, but it had one of the jumpsuits from the Running Man.
Oh,
Huh.
okay. That's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah. That's all that I remember as a kid for movie props that they carried. But
I don't.
yeah,
I don't. Interesting. I don't know. We mostly had the stores that had just the pop up posters. If it was like a life size or like a poster of like Arnold Schwarzenegger on a stand or something because of
yeah, like
Terminator 2.
the card, like that real popular
No
one.
movie props though.
But I was
Yeah.
gonna say, but like they were like the cardboard cutout, almost like a mini version of what you see at the movie theaters nowadays. I mean, those are
Mhm.
now so massive. But yeah, I remember those, and then those kind of died off at video stores. You didn't really
Yeah.
see them much anymore.
So, Beard, what was the ritual of your household as far as a
Well,
rent
I
going?
mean, first of all, I remember seeing this little video store kind of in the corner of like a major freeway interchange that I always wanted to go in and check out what they had, but for some reason, mom and dad wouldn't let me. It was weird. I don't know what it's called, but they had
Okay, you were
started with an
thinking of a
X.
different video store. Okay.
Yeah.
Were there beads in the front window?
There were
Was
no
it pink
windows. It
lights?
was weird.
Was it pink lights
Um,
with X's?
yeah, you must have seen it. No, for a while when I was real young, it was just me and my uh, younger brother. We did like movie nights like almost every Friday. It was
Mhm.
we went to go get a movie. We got pizza and root beer. And
Nice.
we'd sit at the old coffee table made of like, particle board, and it's got the just nasty looking doors on it, and the TV, the old tube TVs up there, and we'd watch that on our just even for the time ancient VCR. But no, that was kind of it. We didn't really often have a plan going in. That was kind of like the ritual was you went in and you found something. And we didn't
Mhm.
have a lot of money, so it was usually we had to find one thing that at least my brother and I agreed on. Mom and dad would suffer through whatever we picked most of the time. I mean, I'd always find a way to walk through the horror movies that I never got to see, and I still remember some. Like
Covers.
I would always see the Hellraiser.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
Oh,
and
you said
and I
horror films. I thought you said
yeah.
horror films.
No, that's the other movie store. Uh, no, I still actually have never seen Hellraiser, but I know a lot about it, and I could picture
Covers.
that box
Yeah.
art in my mind. I'd also since we just had like Blockbuster and things like none of these really like local mom and pop places, there was no black curtain to try to sneak behind. But occasionally I got busted, looking down an aisle, looking at a box art I wasn't supposed to be looking. Didn't know why I liked it so
Box
much.
art was fun though, right? Like it
Oh,
was
it
I
was back in the day
remember
when it was really art because it had to grab your attention. It had to tell enough of a story to make
yeah,
you want to learn more.
and or flip it over so you can read the back.
Yeah.
And you would pick up the movie and oh wow, this like I remember doing that with like Poltergeist and you like, why's this girl like touching a TV and it's glowing? I didn't even know what the word poltergeist meant, right? But it still was creepy. I knew it had to be something with ghosts. And I remember that one there. I remember like all the Friday the 13th ones being kind of creepy. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
you would spend most of your time just looking at the book,
Oh,
the
we
cover
could
art.
spend 30 minutes at minimum, sometimes an hour wandering the aisles, and you pick one up and you read it. You're like, oh, that's interesting. Put it back. Pick the other one up. Go back to the first one. Then you take one of the tapes. I knew they said just one of the tapes out from behind it. And you carry it with you. You go, oh, that one looks good. So, I have to go find this again. Where did I find it? So you can put it back.
Yeah. Or you knew which ones were rented the most because how dirty the
Yeah.
case was. Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah.
And it was just it was. It seems like you had a fun time though. Like it seems like your brother
It
and
it,
you.
it was always an event. Whether we were doing I mean, it started as just videotapes, but eventually we got uh we had not my parents' old Atari, but we never rented anything for that. But the NES and the Super NES, we would go back and we'd rent that, and that it would just added more to it. Now we had the whole ritual of let's get can we get a VHS
Hmm.
and a game, or
Yeah,
we have to
mom.
choose one or the other. Do we want to get a game we've played before so we can try to get further into it? Do we want to try to get
Yeah,
something new?
yeah, yeah.
This game looks really awesome, but oh no, turns out it's really terrible.
I'm glad I didn't waste so much money on it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Same thing here. You know, it was usually a Friday night or some type of weekend. Uh, we would get a couple stacks of them, one for the parents, you know, a couple for the kids, and then if we did get a game or video game, that you know we did rent it. In our area when I was renting, yeah, Blockbuster I don't think was really in our area yet, but we did have a lot of local video stores. Um, and I'll get into this later, but I even worked at a video store when I was young, right around high school. So that was an experience I got to see from both sides of the business. But yeah, I do remember getting really excited, hoping that that movie you knew came out already is available because you would either see it on their storefront window that they got Jurassic Park, or they've got, you know, some other new movie that came out and it's already. But Rick, right, there would be like 10 of them on the shelf, and you would hope there'd be one left, right, when
Yeah.
you first got there.
Well,
Uh,
I was gonna say for me, my parents were like, if it was something really big, like example, like Jurassic Park, right? We were all 10 when that came out, and that, I mean, what kid doesn't love dinosaurs? My parents are like, we'll spend $20 and just buy it on VHS because you're gonna rent it more than $20 worth to do it. Not to knock Beard, I really thought Beard was gonna say we had a Betamax growing up, so we only had a small little wall in the video store by us that we got to pick
My
things from.
grandparents had a Betamax. I remember that.
So did mine, and it was like the
did,
most foreign thing in the world.
Yeah, I don't remember. I remember.
It's
I
not a
don't
video
know. I don't know if anybody I knew had a beta. I don't know if I
because
knew anybody.
they were smaller, and it was like I remember as a kid, like, wait, this looks like a videotape, but it's almost like a cassette tape, like with
Hmm.
music
Yeah.
on it. Um,
And you mentioned beard cover art. We could do a whole video on cover art. I think that would be a
oh
fun
yeah.
Yeah.
video. Yeah. So now, did you after your ritual, you would rent that video, right? Were you ever? Is there any times where you're like, "Oh crap, we have to run to the video store and return our video so we don't get a late fee"? Well, did you have any issues? What do you know of?
Oh yeah.
Did you
Um,
have like, oh, that's where that video's been, is under your couch for 30 days?
Never quite that long, but yeah, especially kind of early on, uh, being a single car family, it'd be like, okay, my mom would be like, well, as soon as your dad gets home, we got to go. We got to take this back. If you're going to go with me, go to the bathroom. I don't care. Try, put your shoes on and be by the door because otherwise you're not going. We're not going to rent anything today. We're
We're
just
dropping
taking it
off.
back.
We're just doing a
We got the
drop off.
slot outside. We got
Yeah,
to
the
get it
rent
in
slot.
before like 6 o'clock.
I was gonna say, fortunately, it never really was ever an issue to remember to bring stuff back when we would get a couple things. It was always when it was those occasions where we got one thing,
Hmm.
or there were a few times where I remember, like, more so, like, occasionally it seemed to pop up more with my older brother and sister, where like there would be like some movie that they wanted to watch, or it was related to something to school, and somehow, my mom or dad would get it for them, and like that would always get something that would be like a late fee.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't remember it happening too much.
Okay. We had a few.
I
My
mean,
parents.
it happened occasionally, but then just um,
When I worked at the video store, we had quite a few people where um, we had to literally file a small claims on people that had so much late fees, they weren't allowed to
well,
rent. and we would have we like you actually owe a lot of money
Well,
in late fees.
Wow.
well, the other thing too that a lot of people don't, unless you're somebody that's like really into movies and you're really into media, up until like 1990, it wasn't until really like the release of Batman 89 to home video, VHS tapes were expensive. I mean, they cost
They
anywhere
were.
from like 60 to like $120. And a lot of
Yeah,
that was based on how many they produced.
Mhm.
But at the time, it wasn't really looked at as necessarily as like a home, like a format that people would own. It was looked at as people would rent these things. And so that's why like the late fees and the rewind and all that stuff kind of came about as well, is because that price of the media was so expensive. And
right.
if any of you, folks that listen, if you're on X, Tom Connors, from Midnight's Edge, he posts a lot of like old. He gets like somehow like promos that he'll post of like old videotapes, and you'll see how expensive they are, and it always.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just it's funny to see. But yeah, it wasn't until Batman '89 came out that blew up so big on home video that they, because it was such a big summer blockbuster. Warner Brothers really spent a lot of money to mass produce that, and it went huge because you could get it, for like 20-25 bucks.
Yeah,
Um, and from that, yeah, VHS just blew up, and people just wanted to own that media at home now.
yeah. So, and like I said, yes, beer. There were people who owed a lot of life. We had people would owed so much that they wouldn't think that we knew that they were in the car when they would send their wives in to rent more videos with a second account. Like, no, no, we know who's in there.
Now, I got to ask you, now, did you work at a place that had the neon light section?
We had both. We had the
Okay.
children's section, adult section, and then the adult section. So
I
yes, and
was
there.
good.
Mhm.
Okay. So,
And remember, mind you, I was 13, 14, 15 when I was working at this store
I was just
in the
gonna
summer.
say, um, yeah, that makes me think of something.
Here, go stock these. Where is this one go? Never mind, that one goes with me.
Yeah, there was only one time where I was allowed to go in there, and that was on my 18th birthday because I still knew the owner of the video store when I went back. And I would say, hey, I'm 18 now. He's like, hey, guess what you get to do now? And I was like, what? He's like, oh, I was like, oh, I get to go back in the room. And
It was like
sure
the end of
enough,
Pulp Fiction when they open up the
you were
trunk and
like,
it's
I
just the
don't work.
light.
I was gonna say, were you like, I don't work here anymore?
no,
That'd be
no,
even better. Just walk in
no,
randomly.
yeah, he was fun. It was a fun experience working in a video store. And this kind of gets me into like the atmosphere of it, right? Like people would come in like you, same thing, Friday night, movie night, got to get the
Yeah.
one movie, and sometimes you would have people rushing to the same movies. You had people upset because they're still owed late fees, or there were kids running around this store looking for videos. So you weren't the only family in there. And I
The
think
videos.
Blockbuster did a really good job of showing that in the commercials. If you
Yeah.
look at old Blockbuster commercials, it does show a lot of people, you know, either slowly going through the aisles looking for a video. So the atmosphere, it was almost like a library, but a little bit more energy, right?
Yeah.
And
That's why
not so quiet.
sometimes you went on like Thursday, maybe even Wednesday to make your pick. You won't have it. You won't be able to watch it as much if you're a kid because you have to wait till the weekend. So you can't watch it as
Hmm.
many times before you have to return it. But you might be able to get what you want.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Do you
Well,
remember? Go ahead, Rick.
I was gonna say, because that was like the other thing too for like a while. Like new releases were like very strict, where it was like some places like
One day.
they would give you one day, one night, essentially,
Hmm.
Yep.
and then it like went to like two,
Hmm.
and
And sometimes you have the 5 day rentals. Like you could rent 5 movies for 5 days. I remember that kind of deal.
yeah. Well, the
Yeah.
video store, if you think about it, was kind of like the watering hole for a community.
Yeah.
I mean, especially on, Friday, Saturday night. I mean, that was where so many people got together. And I do later, once I was 16 and I could drive, I went to the video store all the time. And my mom would let me borrow her debit card. She didn't care what I rented. Um, But
Wow,
I mean,
lucky.
I just not that I went like super crazy, but like I would get a couple. And this was at that point where Blockbuster really just didn't worry about late fees, didn't worry. I mean, they weren't worrying about rewinding stuff because it was DVD. Um, but
Now, let's be
I
honest. They never really cared too much about rewinding things.
No, we
Once they
did.
got a couple of rewinding machines in there,
No, we still did. We didn't. We
Yeah,
didn't
they
like it.
still would want you
We
to
still have to
rewind it.
rewind it.
Yeah.
Still
oh
takes
yeah, but
time.
still,
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I remember, like, just there was this one night. This is like it must have been like 1998 because this is when the movie came out. Uh, I just remember it was just booming down there, and like at that point too, like I knew so many people that worked at Blockbuster, so like they would hold things for me,
Mhm.
and I remember coming in, there was just lines of people, just
Oh,
like
you're that
I,
guy.
get- I was gonna, yeah, I went that often later in life. They knew
Yeah.
me that well. But I was just gonna say, I don't know why this memory just sticks in my brain. It cracks me up when I think about it. But everybody was there, and it was one of those things where it was like, oh, hey Bob, what you renting? And the one guy just like looked up, and I just remember hearing him go, negotiator.
What?
this Arto, you're describing like the lamest club experience. Like you're sauntering up to the door because you're on the list. And meanwhile, they're having this conversation in the line waiting outside.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I waited in line, like everybody else, but it was just one of those things. Like I could call and be like, "Hey, could you hold this for me? I'm gonna come in later tonight and get it." And they'd go, "Sure," because they came in so much. Grand Theft Auto 3 came out. Do you remember when that game came out? I
No.
rented that 6 weeks in a row until I beat it.
Oh
I would
crap.
just rent it, and then I'd walk in and I'd be like, "I'm gonna rent it again," and they just scan it and be like, "All right."
So we had those too. We put limits on the video store. We did put limits on like how many times you could rent if you've rented before, especially if it was like a new one. Like if you were just like re-renting Jurassic Park every weekend or week, we had that type of deal. Um, but you talk about like you were having you knew people, like people who knew like always coming in. We had that. So like sometimes we have guys that would come in and instead of YouTube, they're chatting about movies. They would literally sit at the counter for hours and chat about whatever movie they wanted to talk about that day. And they weren't. I'm like, do you have like as a teenager? You're like, does this guy work? So like literally chatting all day to the owner about whatever movie topic. It could be anything. And we had those characters, and they show that in Clerks, right? When he's in the video store, he's just kind of sitting there chatting to someone about some other movie, or about some facts about some movies. That actually happened. Like, there were
Yeah, because
there were people like that.
at certain times of day, there wasn't exactly a ton of people coming in.
Mm-mm.
So there may actually be things that need to be done, but maybe don't want to be done. So you're put up, you sit and talk movies with this guy, and then you
Mhm.
realize it's been 3 hours and he said the same thing over and over again. I really kind of want to go scrub the toilets. Please, sir, leave.
Do you remember in Scream, the kid who worked in the video store where he like knew
Randy.
all the Randy, he knew all the movies. Those people existed. Rick would be one of
Well,
those people that
uh,
worked
I've
in
I've worked with a
so
couple of them, not at a movie store, but I've worked with a couple of them that
yeah,
just
yeah, like
um,
yeah.
so there was always one big video person, cinephile that worked at the video store though too. And so
Mhm.
that was always kind of who like I'd end up just being buddy buddy with till like they
Yes,
ended
you
up
had
leaving.
people like that in this store. You
And
had all kinds of stuff.
and I would probably say I'd spend a good half hour when I would go to the video store because I would chat, and
Mhm.
usually too, like a lot of times, like if I was bored, I'd be like, what do you recommend? Because I'm like, I
Yeah.
want to watch a movie, but like I don't know what to get. Like, and some of that stuff they'd recommend, like I'd like it, and then there'd be other times where I'm like, I thought this was crap.
So Quentin Tarantino, he did a recording, a podcast with Joe Rogan, and he talked about he used to work at a video store. He used to own one. And he would people would come in and ask for recommendations, and he would ask them all things like, "What do you like? What do you do in your daily life? Like, what do you like? What do you prefer?" And then after they answered all those questions, he would find them like almost like the perfect movie. Was that like that's
Yeah,
pretty cool? Yeah.
that is.
Just based off like just having a few questions and one little conversation with them, he would do those type of things. So yes, you can ask the video store owner, what do you recommend? What we'd also would get, like we would get those sneak peek videos where like you can put them on up on the old tube TVs that are hanging off the wall, right?
Hmm.
And you would put in like, hey, this movie's coming out next week or 2 weeks from now. You because we got the movies early in some cases. so you can like preview movies, so you can kind of advertise, people if they haven't seen it before or didn't know it was coming out. I remember those. Those are pretty cool.
I mean, I was gonna say in my early teens, it got to the point where I rented, I wanted to rent so many films when we'd go to the video store because I would like,
You
I
were this kid?
I'd easily pick out, 5 things. My parents, and it was at Sam's Club that they sold them.
Okay.
It was the Go Video dual deck VCRs, and so my parents bought that for me, and then bought me like a giant thing of blank tapes. And so every time I would go,
Allegedly.
Oh,
I
wow. Yeah.
Allegedly.
no, I mean, I'll say it now. Who cares? I made bootleg copies of everything
Look
we
at
rented, and
what?
then my parents are like, then you're not paying again to re-rent this because we know you're gonna want to re-rent it and watch it a bunch. And
America, what a place.
exactly. And then I discovered that, like, if you covered up the little broken tab port, you could record over a
Oh
movie.
my gosh.
So
I think one
so
time I
Wow.
did, like, I put an entirely different film on something. I'm like, this is pure crap. Nobody needs to watch this.
Man, you're just
there,
destructive.
I'm just gonna toss this out there. Apparently, there is no actual statute of limitations on copyright theft.
Yeah, so
I also cut the label off of a mattress once too. How about that?
maybe we just mute the whole section.
Why do you
of
think
Here's what you
Mrs.
do.
R2 married me? I'm such a bad boy. That's why.
No, here's what you do with this is you just put a constant bleep noise like South Park would do when somebody would go on a rant, because actually that's funnier on TV edited than uncensored.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Unbelievable. I didn't know Rick was such a criminal.
Yep.
So, we've talked about video stores. We've talked about the why we miss them, the fun about them. Now, when did you start seeing like that shift in where you think the video store was kind of going away? For me, it was when Netflix started letting you rent these things by
Yes.
mail.
Yeah, I was an early adopter for Netflix. I don't remember what movie it was, but there was at least one that they just sold to me because I had had it for too long. They're like, we're not even charging you late fees. You're paid the cost of the disc. You can just have it now. And I don't even know. I still don't know what happened to that disc.
I don't think they had late fees. I don't even think they really, they just recharge you for the next week.
Yeah.
You had a list that you can create, and it would just
you
give
had
you
your preferred list, and they would choose the topmost one that was available and send that to you. And so sometimes your number 1, 2, 3, you might not see for a long time because they were just in such high demand. It was actually not a bad system.
Yeah, same thing with the dirty VHS case. You knew which one was rented the most by the scratchest, dirtiest CD or DVD.
I mean, and there was the point, I don't know if y'all remember, where Blockbuster tried to start doing that, and
They
they
did.
started doing it far too late.
We like Blockbuster so much, we decided not to do Netflix. We switched. So we went from Netflix and then switched to Blockbusters to give them a shot. And
Blockbuster had a chance to buy Netflix, by the way.
Yeah. I remember that. But like, so we try to do the Blockbuster route, but what they would do is they would charge you late fees on those little DVDs. And then we did Redbox too. Redbox was the one where it was just like a vending machine, right? And you would go up to it, press the button, and your video would pop out. And then you had stream.
Done that one once with Redbox.
Yeah, those were okay. But again, you had to stand in line to wait
outside.
And there was only 2 copies of that movie in the vendor machine. So if the guy ahead of you got it before you did, you weren't able to get it. So
I was gonna say, so I remember Netflix coming out. Now I never used Netflix for brand new films. I used it for everything that my video store didn't carry. Because it just had everything. But that's what I would do. Now this is gonna, you guys are gonna laugh at this. Did you guys ever accidentally mail back the wrong DVD, like something that was like your own personal DVD?
No.
No, and we don't need to get into what your own personal DVD was.
So Well, I was gonna say I did that, and I forget with what, but I had sent back. I'm a big Mystery Science Theater fan, and I sent back a Mystery Science Theater DVD by accident. And so I messaged him and I said I sent back the wrong DVD in this. I'm like, am I able to have it returned? And I'm like, I will send back this DVD. I'm so sorry. And they're like, unfortunately, because the way that they did their locations, they're like, we can't send it back. I'm sorry. So I rented the Mystery Science Theater DVD and I said it was lost. So that's how I got my DVD back.
Did you put the other one in the one
I
that you
sent the
sent
other
back?
one back though. That was
R2
supposed to
is
go back.
confessing to all sorts of things. I don't know. My dad's a pastor, but
How
I'm
did
not
I?
wearing a collar under.
How
You don't
did
have
I
to
do something
confess
wrong?
things.
I sent back the wrong DVD. I sent back the right one, and then I re-got the DVD that I sent back by mistake, and I took it back. I'm
Hmm.
sorry, but that balanced out.
He's right. It will balance out, but we're just more little.
Or, well, I was just gonna say for me, where I feel like the video store started to go away was not really with Netflix, because even when Netflix started, there was still a fair amount of people that went to the
Right,
Blockbuster. But it
Yes.
was
Mhm.
Netflix started to stream stuff.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
when, but
I
I
guess it
won't
went.
get on that topic quite yet.
It went two different ways. Like I remember, so the guy that I used to work with, the owner of the video store, he noticed his business dropped as soon as they had a red box at the Circle K next door. Once they had a red box at the Circle K next door, he noticed people started coming in less.
Yeah,
And then, because they were going there for the new releases, and then if Rick was wanting the old movies, he was still coming, but there wasn't enough of those people coming in. So that's when he noticed it, and like within like a year or two after that red box came up. Plus, what also hurt him was because I think Hollywood Video was also trying to really stay in the game. They opened a video store down the road too, so
yeah, Hollywood Video.
everyone went to Hollywood Video. So he was like,
Uh,
and this was like 2000. So he was like, I'm out. I can't do
There
this
was
anymore.
I,
So
there was also, let me just throw this out because I totally forgot about it until you said Hollywood Video. There was a regional one in Southeast Texas, at least around this area, called Hastings. I
oh
don't know
yeah, I
if that
love
made it anywhere else.
Hastings.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Hastings
never
is
But
heard of
yeah,
great.
yeah. See, one of the things about Redbox that I think actually appealed to people, it's some weird study, and I think I actually heard about it. It might have been like one of the game theory spinoff, food theory or something. It might have been there where they've done like social studies of groups of people where they're provided basically with 20 different pasta sauces, and they get overwhelmed. They don't know what to choose. They go with the same thing every single time. But if you provide them with 6 choices, they make the choice faster and they're more likely to branch out to something else. And I think that's kind of what you saw with Redbox. Instead of having to wander around through this big store, which was its own kind of like social thing that people were doing, you were seeing kind of this generational shift where people said, I don't want to go there. I don't want to spend time there. I've got
Mhm.
other things to do. I'm just going to go here where they've got 20 choices and that's it. I don't have to wander a store. And if they're out, they're out. The end.
Right, right.
see now. I will say, Redbox was extremely hit or miss, at least where I lived at, in like the
Hmm.
Bay Area, and we used it a few times, and occasionally it was like one of those things where, again, if it was either like next to, like the grocery store, or maybe like the drugstore, I might peek in it and just like, oh, what's new, and a lot of times, for a while there, it was like, oh, I could get something that was pretty decent, and but I didn't do it too much, but
Yeah, we
I remember the last time I used it, they said I didn't return a film, and I'm like, I don't have it. I stuck it back in there, and I forget they charged
mm,
me like
we
30 bucks for it, and I was like, I'll
mm.
never go back. I'm like, if you guys charge me for this, I'll never rent anything from you guys again.
Yeah.
And I did. The only thing I did is I bought a video game
I,
from it when they started doing that.
I
we
do think it's a matter of convenience, at least in both instances. When Redbox especially started staging themselves at convenience stores and at grocery
Yes,
stores,
we
places
had
you
like three
already
on one
were.
corner.
Right.
I
And but that plus with the streaming, if you had a good high speed internet connection, and you also had the kind of the same limitation of choices with early Netflix is it wasn't a lot of things, but it was some obscure things that brought in, I think, people who liked movies that couldn't find these things elsewhere. I mean, early Netflix is the reason that I know the Korean film Castaway on the Moon, which is honestly still one of my favorite movies, and nobody has seen it. And I can't get anybody to watch it because it just sounds so weird, but it was limited selection. And I said, hell, I'm paying the same price for all of this. I'm going to watch this movie.
Yeah.
But it's funny too. I do want to go back. That's when I feel like Hollywood Video died in my area, is when Netflix came around. Because for me, it's like everybody I knew except for one person went to Blockbuster. And it just depended on like what end of town you were at, because they were both at opposite ends of like this main road where I lived at. And but I would go to Hollywood if I couldn't find something at Blockbuster, and Hollywood always seemed to have the things that Blockbuster didn't carry, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, like once Netflix came around, like that, I feel like killed like the Hollywood Video in our area. And I think the only thing that kept it going was the Game Crazy.
Right.
I was about to say Game Crazy actually kept the Hollywood Video in my area afloat. This tiny little game section was bringing far more revenue. And then they built 2 GameStops near that and killed both at the same time. And then they just absorbed Game Crazy into GameStop.
Yeah. It was an interesting time right around, the late like 2005 to like 2010. It was a lot of things were changing. You had the streaming was getting better, or starting to get going, and we saw it. We saw the video store kind of evaporate, and it was kind of a bummer.
It was several different transitions there. From video rental was the driving force behind home consumption of movies.
Media.
And then it became ownership of that, but people still went to go rent, because why pay full price for this thing? It was cheaper, but not necessarily cheap to buy a VHS.
Well,
go rent it and find out if you like it, then go buy it. And then we see the by mail stuff and then the streaming stuff. And
and you're seeing you're sort of seeing that with movie theaters now.
Yeah,
like streaming is.
Well, the other thing too that we're kind of
pushing out movie theaters
with this is, and it just kind of depended on who you had in your area, and a lot of it too. It seemed like you had to have a box, but cable provided pay-per-view now, but only if you had a box. There was some cable you could get where you just put it straight into your TV and you could just watch channels without it. But if you had a box, you could do pay-per-view. And at the time, though, pay-per-view was like, even if you could get something for like $6 or $7, it was like $6 or $7 to get a movie. Like we're not doing that. It was like only occasionally.
Well, and it was still scheduled viewing at that point.
Yeah, and
at least for a while. Yeah, for a long time it was scheduled viewing, because it would be pay-per-view for that window of time for that thing.
Well, usually it was like a channel that played nothing but that movie on there. At least when the first time that I remember living in a residence where we had a cable box and there was pay-per-view, and so like there was usually like 8 to 10 pay-per-view channels, and then you had like the rest would be adult. I remember that.
I honestly thought when I was a kid that pay-per-view was just like reading the paper on TV.
That's hilarious.
Like I didn't understand it was pay per viewing.
Well, I was going to say,
it was viewing a paper.
Yeah, viewing a paper.
Everything.
All these people paying a lot of money for viewing
to read the paper. I was going to say,
I was an over the air antenna kid for the longest time, and then basic cable, and never once have paid for anything cable wise, like on viewing demand.
But with pay-per-view, like anytime we did pay-per-view, it was like we're going to record it just in case it's good, because it's like if we're paying this much. And it was only to like usually pay-per-view, I could do it when we couldn't get a movie at the video store. Those are rare occasions. Or like either same thing, like my parents were sick or I was sick. Usually if I was sick, they'd go rent me stuff. But usually if they were sick and we couldn't get out of the house, would they allow to watch something pay-per-view? But that was also too, like, again, depending on where you are, that was an option. I mean, there were some places where you may have not even really had a video store near you, and you might have just had either satellite TV, or again, even like you might have to do occasionally your pay-per-view.
Right.
I just want to, I know we'll get, I'll make this short so we can get back to the topic being
Uh-huh.
video rental stores. But can we just acknowledge when we were kids, the parental skill usually more, usually dad was the one who had the remote when you put that tape in to hit record right as the movie started and to optimize the uses of that tape, pause as soon as you hit commercials, and somehow intuitively know this is the last commercial. We're
Oh
going back
yeah.
to the movie. The screen would go black for half a second and he'd hit record just in time for that thing to spin up right as the movie started again.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah,
That was a
they were pros
skill.
out there. There were pros out there. Yes.
But anyway, I just had
Um,
to point that out because that was definitely a childhood memory coming back to me.
that's pretty awesome. Now we never we didn't our family never did the recording thing because it either always got over recorded by something else or we just never did that. So we didn't have a pro recorder at our house, unfortunately. So do you ever wonder if the video store now, since people are kind of maybe burnt out over streaming, is turning into this big catalog of things where you spend at least 30 minutes looking for what you want to watch? Do you think video stores may make a little bit of a comeback as far as like a just like of a nostalgia type of thing where people like when people would go to like Five and Diner, they were like, "Oh, this is so cool! I get to eat at like a diner that would might have been in the 50s." Do you have a feeling that maybe video stores could be something like that?
I would love for them to, but at the same time, I also go as much as like I would love that. And again, I think of my kid like, God, I'd love to take him to a video store and let him run a stack of games or movies. Do you know what I mean? To just be like me.
Your
You
son
know,
would be so nervous. He wouldn't know what to do. What
I know my kid would be so worried. He'd be like, I really wanted two movies, but I couldn't, and I only get this one. I'll just one is good enough for me.
and you would tell him, "Look, now we're only getting three," and he would be like, "What?"
No, I'd be like going like pick out five. Oh, I can't pick out five. It's too many. It's too many.
Dad, have
Because
you seen the prices? We can't do that. That's ridiculous. We'll just come back next week and get another one.
and the thing is, like during summertime, my dad would let me pick out like a stack of video games or video games and movies because it would just keep me busy for
Right.
Yeah.
for such a long time.
So I mean,
But,
to
but this
answer,
is growing up in
okay.
Michigan though too. I'm just saying like it would be so like hot and humid outside. It's one of those things like only certain times of the day we'd go outside, and then trying to stay cool in the basement, we'd be playing video games. But yeah, I'd love for him to come back. I just don't know, if there would just be enough, even if they were just on like a smaller scale, like even like
Yeah.
think of like a
Yeah.
typical Blockbuster. If you cut that in half, like an average
Like I
size
Yeah.
said,
Blockbuster.
yeah, it would be like a small scale where maybe you could rent maybe not the top releases, but maybe it's just like a old catalog of movies, out
The
Yeah.
there.
the other tough thing too, and I mean I hate saying this, but there's a fair amount of places where I go, I don't think it could work because people. I mean, I hate to say this, people are not nearly as trustworthy as they were back then, and I just see too many people just like I ain't bringing it back, or even the media nowadays is far more delicate, where I just people just thrash things too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
VHS was just in its own container, and it was a lot more protected.
let me be just I guess a little bit more optimistic. It's gonna be niche if it does. Very niche. It's gonna be a very specific targeted audience. Our friend of the show, Defro, would be that kind of person. He basically has a video store in his home. He just has that sort of
Yeah.
collection. And it would have to be an adaptation to that model. It wouldn't be pay a couple bucks, bring it back, or we'll charge you more. It'd have to be kind of like, and I, having worked on my car a lot recently, had to rent tools. You pay the full price for the tool, and if you bring it back, you get your money back either full or in part. Now they'd
Mhm.
have to not do in full in order to be a business for movies, but I think that would be the closest thing that we would get is be a niche thing where people not only had old VHSs that they had managed to collect, but also DVDs and
Maybe they
modern
can rent
Blu-rays and
maybe they rent
and
VCRs.
right, exactly. But also like with modern things, I think it would be a lot easier to like with Blu-rays to say, pay the full price for the Blu-ray. And if you bring it back in 3 days, you get X amount of that back.
Yeah.
If you just want to keep it, just keep it. The end. Then they go buy another one to restock their store and everything like that. I think that's the best model that we would get to the closest to a classic rental store model, but it would still be a little bit more like a modern retail location. And even those have fallen off so much because of streaming. We are seeing a little bit of a resurgence of people wanting physical media
Mhm.
because of some changes that happen in streaming, where classics that may be seen as offensive today can't be appreciated or even just researched as historical pieces because certain things have been taken out.
Right.
And understanding the context of history is part of understanding the art that was made in that history. You don't necessarily have to like it if you want to just understand it. Um, and then you see things where CGI falls through, so then they just stealth edit in new stuff later on, and then they don't really tell you about it, and or things could just disappear because they don't do well enough in streaming, like that
Uh-huh.
Willow TV show on Disney Plus. Now it's just gone. Now it's
Yeah.
lost media, and that's actually kind of sad because even if it wasn't very well received, if it wasn't very good, that's media that was produced. People put their, blood, sweat, and tears into it, and somebody on that set had to have been trying. Maybe not all of them,
Well,
but
and,
somebody had
there
to, and it's just gone now.
well, you had those same movies in the video store. We had a section. We literally like that's the section that's, the B-rated videos. They weren't, but if you people actually said, "Well, no, these were actually good. I like watching these." And I think in the land of streaming, some of those movies go away. Well,
Yeah.
this has been
And
really go ahead.
I would be remiss to add, and I might get a look if I didn't say that a mouse just whispered in my ear and pointed out that how many cult classics do we have that people love today that would have just absolutely disappeared?
Oh, a
That
ton.
were just did nothing in the theater, and even for maybe many years, Troll 2 didn't do anything in sales, but then developed that cult following
Yeah,
afterward that's kept it
because
going.
of rental stores. Like
Um,
people didn't know
Right.
movies existed unless they saw
I
it at the
do
rental
agree with you
store.
guys on that, but at the same time, too, though, we still haven't lost that entirely. And the reason I say that is, like, I'll give you the example. Like, look at John Wick. John Wick was a movie that didn't do well in the theaters, but people watched it on when it came out on cable. Um, and it found it, following there. And then even look at like RRR. That's something if we hadn't heard from, you know, uh,
RR is a Indian movie. No, what was it? No, not
yeah, it's
Indian
an
movie.
Yeah.
Indian. Yeah,
And we reviewed that a few years
yeah,
ago. But
and
yeah.
I mean that came about because of Chris Gore, but I mean, still, just somebody who recommended, like, hey man,
I mean,
I
yeah,
just
and
watched
it's
this.
still
This was phenomenal. Everybody should go watch this. And
it still does happen, but I think there's such a big risk now of maybe it's not it disappears fully. Maybe it's the original cut of something.
mhm.
There was the um when Arrested Development came back to Netflix, they butchered that, and it was terrible the way they did everything out of sequence and clearly blue screen and stuff. They didn't flow like the original TV show, and they completely recut that, which objectively made it better. But that original cut of that show is gone unless somebody
Mhm.
pirated it off of
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Well, if you buy it on streaming, I mean, again, you have to buy it, but if you get the streaming version, well, and this is what I have more to this example. You get the real version of it. You don't get the Netflix edited, like how Blockbuster would do that with some of their controversial movies that they would
Uh,
rent. And the reason I say that is my wife and I watched The Office constantly on Netflix when it was on Netflix. I mean, we had it on 24/7 nearly. I mean, it seemed like it just we had it on in the background if we weren't watching something else. We just had The Office on. And then a couple of years ago, after it went off Netflix, um, there was like a holiday sale on it, and my wife got it for like $20. And we're watching it, and there was stuff on there. I'm like, I don't remember seeing this. I'm like, is this like special features? And no, we're watching a regular episode. Like Netflix, yeah, would edit stuff out too.
Hmm.
And even something like The Office. I mean, that
well,
was on like prime time TV.
and I won't. We won't just keep necessarily going down this because I think everybody gets the point. But I mean, that even did happen occasionally on some TV shows. The American airing of the anime Cowboy Bebop skipped one of the episodes for years but as it involved blowing up buildings, and guess about what time that episode was supposed to air in America.
So
So that just like it's not necessarily uncommon for things to do like that. It's just it seems so weird to just know that I could watch something today as streaming, see it one way, watch it next year, see it a different way, and watch it 2 years later, and it could be a different way.
yeah, and we didn't really get that with VHSs. It was
No.
You might
unless you
get it with
watched
a TV cut, because the
the
TV
TV
cut
cut.
sometimes
Mhm.
actually they'd cut out certain things and then bring in things that didn't make the theatrical cut to try to pad out
Right.
like the run times.
Right. So we're gonna wrap it up here. This has been a really engaging, fun conversation with both of you. We haven't had a conversation like this in a very long time. I'm glad
Yeah.
to hopefully we get back to the groove of doing things like this.
Yeah,
We would love.
and
Go ahead.
I know I'm interrupting you. I just wanted to shout out to you, JT. You do always do a good job bringing topics to this stuff, because I don't know about R2. I came into this knowing the topic that's on the video title, and that's it. And I'm thinking, I don't know how we're going to make like 30 minutes this, let alone nearly an hour.
Oh, I mean, I knew
But-
JT was going to have a bunch of.
But no,
things
you
to
did.
ask
Yeah, I want to
us.
say, yeah, it's really nice to get back into this like kind of.
Yeah.
You do a really
Ye-
good job at this.
Thanks. So basically, want to hear from you. Comment down below? Like, what do you miss of your favorite memories of video store? What was your rituals? What were the things that you miss of the atmosphere? Were you the late fee dude that owed tons of money at the late fee store?
Were you the
Also,
person who watched that same scene in Showgirls and Wild Things constantly?
yeah, no, it
Do
kept
you
being.
still have a Blockbuster card?
Yes,
I know
I
you
do.
do.
So if we'd love to hear from you. This would be great. Also, if you want us to cover any other topics like VHS cover arts from the video, which ones we would pick.
We could do a series on that. I'm not going to influence you guys. We could do a series on that. Like we could do not even just decades. We could break that down to years of good cover art.
Yeah, we could do
Who had the
cover art.
best tour covers?
Yeah.
We can even do movie candy when you would get at the video store. We could do a lot. So we would love to hear
Yeah.
from you about that. And so we can do more of these. Yeah, so again, make sure to hit that like. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. We'd love for you to do that. I think we're close to 570, Rick. I think we're close to
Yeah.
570 now. So yeah, we're excited to hear it after the weekend. Make sure you check out our
And
video rental
want-
videos. So
I do
go
want to
ahead.
mention, and if there's a topic any of the people that subscribe to us would love to see us talk about, share it in the comments. And we always love getting ideas from you guys.
Yep, we do. Alrighty, everyone, you have a good rest of the good day or a good evening whenever you're watching this, and we'll see you next time on After the Weekend. Later.
Take care.
Bye.